You good?
Good morning, boys and girls. Welcome to our time together today. So glad you could be a part of it. Well, it may not feel like it fall right now, but it's coming. But you know, when we think of fall, what's some things that you think of? Falling leaves. And one thing that I think of when I think of fall is apples. Yeah, it's apple season. I don't know how many of you may have gone to the mountains or they're growing apples and you can go to North Georgia and pick some apples. Of course, you can always go to the grocery store and find apples because all during the year you can find apples. But wow, it's apple season. Fall of the year, then we start with apples. Now in the spring, of course, apples form a little bloom on the trees and that bloom turns into an apple. Have you ever heard the saying, an apple a day keeps the doctor away? Well, I don't really know if that's true or not, but apples are very nutritious. They're very good for you. They've got full of vitamin C, which is something that you need for your body. They have fiber in them, and they're really a good sweet treat. So, you know, a lot of times when you come in from school or you want a snack and you go and you get cookies and you get candy, why not grab an apple and eat it? Because it's something that's healthy, it's nutritious, and it doesn't have as many calories in it as those sweets, and it is sweet. It's good and sweet. So instead of buying the cookies and the candy, you might just treat yourself to an apple. Now apples are used, we can just eat them, just pick one up, wash it off, and just bite into it. You can eat the peeling and what's inside the apple. And there's not many fruits that you can eat the whole thing, but this is something that you can eat because there's some fruits like oranges and things like that that you can't eat the peeling, but this you can eat the peeling off. Now today we're going to be focusing and talking about some of the different kinds of apples because there's a lot of apples out there that are grown. Actually here in the United States they grow about over 2,000 kinds of apples. That's a lot of different kinds of apples, and there's a lot of varieties of apples. And we're going to talk about some of those varieties in just a few minutes. And I have a yummy edible craft that we're going to do today that I think that you'll enjoy doing. All right, so come join me today and let's explore about apples. Now I have a book here today called The Apple Orchard Riddle. Apple Orchard Riddle. So let's read the book before we explore about the world of apples. The kids in Mr. Tiffle's class were going on a field trip. Hurry up, Tara, said Robin. You'll miss the bus. Tara took a seat by herself next to the window. She liked to look outside and wonder about things. Tara's in dreamland again, said Anna. The lights are on, but nobody's home, said Ellen. Tara didn't hear them. She was just too busy daydreaming. When they got to the apple orchard, everybody hurried off the bus, except for Tara. Tara walked off slowly. It takes me a little more time to do things, she said. Yes, I've noticed, said Mr. Tiffle. The class gathered around the orchard farm owner, Farmer Hill. Today, she said, we are going to take a tour of the orchard. We'll see how apples are picked, how cider is pressed. We'll watch apples get peeled by a special machine, and we'll pick some apples off the tree. Plus, I have a riddle for you to solve, said Mr. Tifton. What's the riddle? Asked Charlie. Mr. Tifton said, show me a little red house with no windows and no doors, but with a star inside. show me a little red house with no windows, no doors, and a star inside. Do you think you can solve that riddle before they do? Let's see. Think about that. That's it, said Jake. That's the riddle? That's the riddle, said Mr. Tifton. Your job is to find the answer. How are we going to have time to figure this out while we also have to learn about apples, said Molly. Are you sure this is fair? Yes, I'm sure, said Mr. Tifton. I'm not very good at tests, Tara said. That's lucky because this is not a test, said Mr. Tifton. The class walked along a path lined with trees, stretching away as far as they could see. We grow 20 varieties of apples here, Farmer Hill said. Who can name some apple varieties? Macintosh, said Alex. Granny Smith, said Jeremy. Crispin, Fuji, Gala, Red Delicious, Golden Delicious. Thank you, Elmer. Our varieties ripen at different times, so we pick them from late summer to early fall, said Farmer Hills. There's plenty of ladders for you to use to pick the apples off the highest branches. I'm so tall, I probably won't need a ladder, said Robert. Probably not, said Farmer Hill. These branches are so low we can all reach, said Charlie. That's right, said Farmer Hills. Only pick apples off the trees, not off the ground, she added. To pick an apple, twist the stem until the fruit comes off the branch. She showed the class how to do it and gave them each a small bag for holding apples. They twisted and picked until their bags were full. Tara didn't pick any apples. Instead, she sat under a tree and looked up at the sky. What was that riddle again, she asked. Show me a little red house with no windows, no door, but with a star inside? Said Elmer, who was good at tests. There was an apple on the branch right above Tara's head. Tara twisted it off. This is red, she said. Farmer Hill showed the class where the apples were stored. We keep the apples cold and fresh in the storage barn, she said. That way folks can enjoy them all year around. Jake noticed something about the building. A red house, said Jake. And look, no windows. But it has 2 doors, said Anna. And Farmer Hill just said it had apples inside, not stars, said Elmer. So that is not the answer to the riddle, said Jake. Correct, said Elmer. Tara wasn't looking at the barn. She was looking at her apple. She saw a tiny worm burrow into it. Hey, look who lives here, she said. Yuck! Don't eat that one, said Robert. I won't, said Tara. She laid the wormy apple carefully on the ground. Mr. Tifton tossed her an apple out of his bag, and she took a bite. At the cider press, Farmer Hills put on a raincoat and a hat before she got close to the machine. Making cider must be a messy business, said Mr. Tifton. And noisy too, said Farmer Hills. The class watched as fresh, washed apples traveled up a chute to get chopped up into tiny pieces. This is called pulp, said Farmer Hills. Pulp, said Elmer. Not nice word. Next, a farmhand used a hose to spray the pulp onto canvas sheets. Cool, said Jeremy. Finally, the sheets of pulp were pressed down hard. The juice flowed through the sheets into a hose. And Farmer Hills, said Farmer Hills, then it gets pumped into big metal tanks for one last treatment. And then it's cider? Asked Charlie. Then it's sanitized, and then it's cider, said Farmer Hill. Robert spotted an old tractor as they walked across the farmyard. The tractor was red with rust. Hey, he called, this tractor doesn't have a window or door. Alex and Charlie ran over. That's because this is a tractor, not a house, said Alex. It could be a house, like for mice, said Charlie. Mice sometimes live in a tractor seat. Alex and Charlie and Robert poked around the seat. There were no mice. Maybe there's a star inside, asked Alex. Robert and Charlie looked all over the tractor. It had a steering wheel and a gas gauge and a couple of pedals, but no star, said Charlie. The apple peeler was the next stop. We use the peeled apples for pies and cakes, said Farmer Hill. She turned the machine on. It peeled each apple in a blink of an eye. Whoa, said Jeremy. That's fast. Do it again. Molly and Kenny peered into the machine, but they did not get too close. It's sort of red, said Kenny, even though it's also a little silver. And there are definitely no windows, said Molly. No doors either, said Jeremy. So we win. Yeah, but where's the star? Kenny asked. The three of them watched as the machine peeled the apples one after another. No star here, said Kenny. At the end of the tour, Farmer Hill took the class to the farm stand. Help yourself to a cup of apple cider and apple donut, she said. Just one each, said Mr. Tipton. But Tara's not eating hers, said Jake. Tara was still munching on the core of her apple. Aren't you done with that yet? Asked Robert. Not yet, said Tara. She chewed every last bite of it until she got to the seeds. 5 seeds, she said. Just then, Mr. Tipton looked at his watch. Hey, class, he called. The bus will be here soon. Let's talk about what we learned today. We learned that apples come in lots of different varieties, said Molly. Crispin, Fuji, Gala, Red Delicious, Golden Delicious. That's right, Elmer. Cider presses make a lot of noise, said Jeremy. Donuts are yummy, said Jake. How about the riddle? Asked Mr. Yufton. There doesn't seem to be an answer, said Elm. I told you it was no fair, said Molly. Tara walked over to Mr. Tifton. She had 5 apple seeds in one hand and a round red apple in another. She handed Mr. Tifton the apple. This is a little red house with no windows and no door, said Tara. That's not a house, asked Jake. If you were a worm, said Tara. Mr. Tifton smiled at Tara. Go on, he said. I think there's a star inside this apple, said Tara, where nobody can see it. If nobody can see it, who cares, said Robert. I care, said Mr. Tifton. Let's take a look. The class gathered round. Mr. Tifton took the apple out of Tara's hand. Where's the hidden star? He asked. You'll see it if you cut it the right way across the middle, said Tara. Mr. Tifton borrowed a small knife from Farmer Hill. He cut the apple in half. right across the middle. And there is the star. Just then the bus rumbled down the lane. "Let's give a cheer for Farmer Hill's class," said Mr. Tifton. And they did. "The donuts were great," Jake shouted. The class grabbed their jackets and bags and ran to go home. "Come on, Tara," said Mr. Tifton. When she got to the bus, Tara chose a seat by herself. She took a bite of her apple with a star inside. Then she looked out the window so she could daydream a little more. All right, so she ended up solving the riddle today, didn't she? Pretty neat, isn't it? Well, I want to take a few minutes and I want to talk to you about some of the different kinds of apples. Now, I only have about 6 varieties, although there are many, many more that you can find in the grocery store. But I want to start with a very small type apple, and this is called a gala apple. Now, when you bite into it, it's crisp and it's very sweet. So it makes good things like cakes and pies and things like that. But it's just really a good snack to eat and very healthy. But you can see it's a smaller type apple. And it's red most of the way. It's red with a little bit of yellow on it. All right. Now this is one of my most favorite apples, and this is called a red delicious apple. Now it is crunchy and it's mildly sweet. And you can see this apple was actually developed in 1874 in Peru, Iowa. Okay. Now there is a neat story about how this developed. It was one time before it started developing into an apple that looks like this. You can see it's kind of an oblong. It's not quite so round like some of these apples that we're used to seeing. But the story behind this is one time a farmer in Iowa had a terrible, terrible freeze that came along and just froze all of his crops, his apple trees, and he thought they were dead. And in the spring, he went back out and found shoots starting on a bush that he thought that was dead, a tree that he thought was dead. And then flowers started growing on it. And then the little apples started growing on it. And they were funny shaped little apples. They looked like this. They were kind of oblong and not quite round like apples usually grow. And then after it grew and developed, he took a bite of it and decided to name it Red Delicious because it was a really good apple. So that's where it developed from. It's just out of a freak of nature. All right, now this is a very good cooking apple, and it makes great apple tarts, it makes great pies, and this is a Granny Smith. Now Granny Smith apples are usually a yellowish green, sometimes they're green, and they are crunchy and they're very tart. Now these actually developed in Australia in the year of 1868. But it's always a very firm apple, and it's got a kind of a tart taste to it, but it's very good in tarts and apple pies. Now this is a Fuji apple, and it was actually developed in Japan in 1962. And you can kind of see it's got a lot of yellow in it, a little bit of red, but it's kind of got a lot of yellow in it. And it's a very super sweet type of apple, okay? Sometimes super sweet apples don't always do really well for cooking, but they're great snacks. Now, this apple is called a jazz apple. You can see it's very red, okay? And it's crispy and it's a tangy type apple, but it's a smaller apple. It doesn't grow quite as big as some of these other apples, okay? And the last apple I'm going to do is called, and this is called a Honeycrisp. Now you can see it's a much bigger apple. It grows much bigger. And it was actually developed in Minnesota in 1991. Okay? Now, we're going to use this apple today for a craft that we're actually going to eat today. Now, I'm going to take this Honeycrisp apple because it's a much bigger apple. Okay? We'll take the sticker off of it. It's got 2 stickers on it. And remember it talked in there in the riddle about the star? Well, we're going to take this apple, and we're going to actually take this apple, and we are going to cut the apple in the middle, okay? let's see if we can find that star. So I'm going to take my knife. You don't want to do this. You want Mom or Daddy to do this, or Grandma to do this. Okay. And we're going to cut the apple. Trying to cut it evenly. It's a tough apple for a dull knife one. Uh-oh. I missed the star, but the star should be right in there. And you can kind of see the star a little bit, right kind of in there. But I didn't really cut it very straight like I should have, because the seeds are right actually in there. And I may take another apple and do it. But anyway, our craft today is going to be, we're going to be making an apple carousel. And I think, apple carousel, that sounds interesting. So we're going to take our apple, our 2 halves like this. And you need some peanut butter. And if you're allergic to peanut butter, you can use like cake frosting. That would work. And I've got some animal cookies here that we're going to use. Okay. And then I've got some straws. And I've done some colorful straws here. And I've cut my straws. I needed 4 of them. So I've cut my straws. And I'm going to take this and I'm going to run my straws like this. I'm going to do 4 of them, like this. Okay. So I've done them kind of like that. Okay. And then I'm going to, this is actually the bottom of the apple. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and put this together. Get that. All right, so I am taking that, and I have done a little lopsided, but I've taken this. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take a little bit of peanut butter, okay, and I'm going to spread a little bit of peanut butter right there. Peanut butter and apples always make a good snack. And I'm going to spread a little bit of peanut butter in between my poles, like this. Okay, and I'm going to take an animal cookie, put an animal cookie there. Take an animal, let's do a camel right there. Okay, and I'm going to do an animal, animal cookie there, and I'm going to do an animal cookie right there. There we go. Now, we have made an apple carousel. How about that? Something that you can eat, and it's good and it's healthy, but that makes a neat craft, and it also makes a neat something to eat. So, that is our craft for today. Now, let's see if we can find that thing. Let's see if I can do a better job. I'll take this apple. See if we can find the star in this apple. And there it is. Look at there. Miss Shari just didn't cut the other one right because I had a dull knife. Okay. So there is the star that was in the riddle. I've actually cut the seeds kind of in half because there was 5, should be 5 seeds in there. Okay. I'm so glad you could join us today. And when you go to the store, look at all the different varieties that they have at the store. Have a great week, and we will see you next week. Bye.